In the spring of 2008, I landed my first writing internship for a technology blog in New York. And my editor there was as sharp as a switchblade. He was this veteran journalist who'd covered the tech industry for ages. So one day he comes up to me and asks me to write a 1-paragraph summary of a new startup that had just raised some money from investors. So I called up the company's CEO and asked about their business model. And as he told me, I proceeded to basically write what he was saying verbatim. After doing that, I took some time, wrote out the paragraph, and handed it to my editor, and it sounded or looked something like this. This week, New York-based startup Montrito secured a $1 million round of funding. The 2-year-old company, which provides digital solutions to leading content providers through its semantic platform technology, has had quite a year. Done, I thought. But pretty soon my editor approached. Tell me a little bit more about this company, he said. Well, I said, they make this semantic platform technology that links them to leading content providers. Yeah, I read that, he said. What does it mean? Well, I explained to him that the semantic platform technology was pretty much a digital solution for leading content providers and then he cut me off and, practically yelling, said to me, how do they make money? I'll let you in on a deep, dark secret. I had absolutely no idea. I just assumed that anybody who was anybody knew what semantic platform technology was, and I sure as heck wasn't going to look like a dingbat asking a CEO what this meant. It backfired. Having been so intent on not looking stupid, I had ended up writing something that basically made no sense at all. So in the process, my editor now knew that I, A, didn't know what semantic platform technology was, but B, was dumb enough to pretend that I did. So tail between my legs, I ended up having to call the company's CEO back and ask him again. And in case you were wondering, he explained that the company made software that they sold to websites, and this software would scan online articles and then determine which ads would be best placed beside each paragraph, and the websites paid them for that software. When I look back at that experience, one of the things that strikes me was how out of place my editor's question seemed. He was this veteran journalist, as I said, who could match wits with the best and smartest of Silicon Valley geeks any day. And yet, for all of his expertise, he'd asked me a question that basically sounded like something you would hear from a total novice. How do they make money? He sounded, basically, like a third grader. I learned something surprisingly profound that day. To be able to write about anything intelligently, you have to be able to explain what you're writing and why you're writing it to a third grader. If you can't do that, the odds are you actually don't understand it as fully as you should. In other words, if you can put yourself in the shoes of a 9-year-old and ask the sort of questions he or she might ask, then you can understand anything. You know, what a credit default swap is, how to calculate tax liability, what the pros and cons of whole life insurance are, anything. It's just a matter of not being afraid to ask the simple questions and to keep asking them until you have a satisfying answer. One teacher I had in journalism school once said that any time that we're struggling to write something, it's not usually because you don't have the vocabulary or you're not a good writer. It's usually because there's some piece of information that you're missing. You don't understand the concept maybe as well as you should. And so it's critical to ask those third grade questions until you get the answer. Let me give you an example. Once the Nobel Prize winning physicist Richard Feynman, who was one of the key players in the Manhattan Project, was asked by a fellow professor to explain why spin 1/2 particles obey Fermi-Dirac statistics, whatever that means. Well, Feynman took him up on the challenge and said that he would prepare a lecture on this very topic that he would explain to his freshman physics students. Now, these weren't exactly third graders, but still, they were novices in physics nonetheless. A couple days later, Feynman approached his colleague. You know, I couldn't do it, he said. I couldn't reduce it to the freshman level. That means we really don't understand it. Now, this test actually has a lot of application in business. For instance, let's say you're an executive and you're being briefed on the new HR software. At the end of it, can you explain to a third grader why it's better than the existing software? Or let's say you're preparing a pitch for an important meeting for your consulting firm. Can you explain why your consulting firm is better than your competitors? Or let's say somebody comes up to you at a cocktail party and asks what you do for a living. Can you explain that to a third grader? It's only after you can give solid, straightforward, simple answers to the types of questions a third grader would ask, that you can be confident that you understand what you're writing about and why.